the oath that is taken each time a soldier signs up for duty, or an immigrant realizes her dream. My oath is not so different from the pledge we all make to the flag that waves above and that fills our hearts with pride.
Just part of the inaugural address we all witnessed. Again, one of the shorter speeches of its kind in the modern era. Let's go to the White House. NBC's Chuck Todd, our chief White House correspondent and political director. Chuck, we haven't checked in with you since the completion of it. Your notes, your thoughts on this man you cover for a living.
Well, you know, one of the things that candidate Obama said he wanted to model himself after 5 years ago is when he said he was hoping to model himself more after a Reagan than a Clinton. And at the time, he was still running against another Clinton. And the point he was making was this. He thought Reagan, in a way, made conservatism mainstream. And so that's what you heard in his speech today. This was an attempt to make progressive liberalism and move it into the mainstream. You can have this argument, is the country center-right, center-left? Clearly, the president wants to help shift American political opinion and move it a little bit, move that pendulum. And I thought that was the most striking thing long-term that you heard about. It was this robust defense that I've heard a number of Doris and a number of other folks say, but a robust defense of government, of progressivism, liberalism, however you want to call it. We know that liberals want to use the word progressive all the time. And then a point that I thought needed to be echoed, I think Andrea mentioned it. This is the first ever inaugural address to mention gay rights, and historically, when we look back on this, it'll be one of the things this inaugural meant for. But this is about his leaving his mark on the political spectrum.
David Gregory, as we watch the just formally and officially nominated to be the next Secretary of the Treasury. I think it's the point Lester Holt made. It was audible to us, the reaction, the point about our wives and daughters, women in general, got in the crowd, in the immediate crowd around the president.
Well, and this is a president of historical significance, not for his own sake, but because of the elevation of gay rights throughout his presidency, and an emphasis on women's rights and equal pay, which he mentioned in an otherwise pretty austere address today. And, you know, there's something about a second term. You know, presidents who are reelected feel confident in a completely different way. They can shape their cabinet in a way that does not bow to all the political guidelines of the first elections that they make. And this is a president who I think is thinking ahead, not only about what he wants to achieve, but thinking about how he elevates his party in 2014 and 2016 and reveal and take advantage of some cracks in the Republican coalition. He wants to drive those. He wants to win some of these arguments in these debates. And I think you're feeling that forcefulness from him, and you've seen it really over the past month.
We've just been watching one of the warriors of the House, John Dingell, and then the justices of the Supreme Court, and Kelly O'Donnell has Senator Portman, Ohio, who played a vital role in the Romney effort this past election season. Kelly?
Well, Senator Portman knows President Obama in a way most people don't, having played him for both Senator McCain and Mitt Romney. Today, your impressions. The president talked about trying to have a cooperative spirit going forward. Is that something that people will really embrace in your party?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a day for us to renew what makes America great, which is finding common ground and solving problems. I thought the president gave an eloquent speech, as he usually does. I wish there had been even more opportunities for him to talk about where we can work together. But I think the overall theme was appropriate. You know, we are one. We've got lots of problems to face, and we need to figure out a way to work together.
When he signed the nominating papers for a couple of his cabinet secretaries, he said he hoped they would be passed through quickly. What's your sense of how the Senate will respond to that?
Well, some of his nominations will go through quickly, I believe. Senator Kerry certainly is an example of that. I think all of us who know him know that he's a person who can represent the United States abroad well. I think there are more concerns about Senator Hagel, frankly, and we'll see what happens there. I mean, it's going to depend on the hearings and what he says in response to questions that members have, including myself, about his views, particularly on the Middle East and Iran. But, you know, we'll see it. Jack Lew is another interesting choice. Jack Lew as Secretary of the Treasury is something that will get a lot of attention. I think in the end he'll be confirmed. But I think people will ask questions about things like tax reform and entitlement reform and what are the policies going to be going forward that we can work together on.
When you see where the president's approval rating is now and beginning a new term, do you think your party has to look at working with him in a different way?
Well, look, we need to work together regardless of approval ratings or whatever the external factors are politically. Our country's in trouble. You know, we have record deficits and debts. We still have relatively low economic growth. We have to get together to solve these problems. We can't do it alone.
Thank you, Senator Portman. Always good to see you, sir. Brian?
Kelly, while you were talking to the senator, a great little tete-a-tete between Bill Clinton and Paul Ryan, former President Clinton now talking to John Dingell, and Paul Ryan has now moved over to a different group, including Treasury Secretary designate Jack Lew. David, this is one of the great tableaus in politics.
Well, you can just imagine. I mean, in an informal setting like this, President Clinton would not hesitate to get into a meaty budget discussion with Paul Ryan. But you know, Bill Clinton still plays this huge role. He warned Democrats over the weekend. Don't diminish the gun culture in this country. Don't look down your nose at those folks. He wants to influence Democratic thought and some of the big decisions that are made.
And Savannah, this is the day you can have these conversations.
No question about it. I think if you're a political junkie and if you're watching right now, you probably fall into that category to some degree. This is just the best. It's a who's who, a mixing and mingling of these folks in Washington who are so recognizable. The only thing I can complain about is why is there no boom mic so we can eavesdrop on everything
John Legend
that they say.
Right.
That was Jeff Zients, who's head of the budget office, off on the periphery on his BlackBerry. He's wondering how much this is costing the government.
And Tom Brokaw, you're watching as closely as I am. Did we just see Newt Gingrich getting into an SUV there for about 3 seconds?
We did, and that woman just to the right of Bill Clinton is Marjorie Margolis, who voted for his tax increase and lost her seat.
The deciding vote.
One term, and there with John Legend. What was striking as I've gone back over the speech, however, Brian, was the absence of foreign policy. And the two really contentious appointments, or at least one, is Chuck Hagel, who's going to run our Defense Department. And I was in the vicinity of John Kerry at some length last night, who is about to become the Secretary of State. And the Middle East is aflame again, and now we're seeing it spreading into Africa in a way that is very hard to get a fix on what the model is for dealing with it, because these are failed states. We've got tribalism again prevailing in Africa and again in the Middle East, because Islamic rage has not been extinguished. Command and control of Al-Qaeda, they believe, has been broken down. But as you saw in Algeria in the past several days, this is going to be a continuing problem out there. That will go to the Defense Department, how it's run, how much money they have to spend, how they reorganize the response to that. And then Secretary Kerry, who is going to pick up the baton from Hillary Clinton, has got to decide what's our relationship with Egypt, now run by a Muslim Brotherhood.
It's actually worth remarking on that because 4 years ago, as we all sat here, none of us expected every assumption you would make about the Middle East for decades to be completely overturned, which just goes to the point that as much as we try to predict what any president will do in terms of his own agenda, what he wants to accomplish, there's always the element of surprise. And in the case of the Arab Spring and what we continue to see in the Middle East, that has huge ramifications and will continue to affect what.
Or think of President Bush's first inaugural when there was no 2001. Or you think of FDR's first and second inaugural, Depression, and then World War II comes at the end of the second time. Or you think of LBJ's inaugural, filled with the Great Society, with all the things he wanted to accomplish in social justice, and Vietnam was a small part of that, and it becomes a swallowing of his administration. So it shows what Tom is saying. These presidents want to focus on what they can control, and at least they have a little bit more leeway on domestic issues, and that's what we care about now as a nation right now. But that stuff is out there and could indeed shape whatever the second term is about.
Kelly